Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today I want to talk about buying a new knife and sort of walk through the whole process of, what you should buy and where you should buy it and what you're looking for and things to avoid and things that you should definitely do. I would love to hear down in the description below your latest knife purchase and what that experience was like. Did something go really wrong that you would, you learned a lesson here, or are there things that went really right and you think, hey, every time I buy a new knife from now on, I'm going to do this, that, or the other. All right. So first, let's think, for some reason, okay, whatever that may be, you need a new knife. Maybe your old knife that you've carried for years broke and now you need a new one. Maybe you dropped it down an ice fishing hole or off a cliff, dropped it over the side of the boat. Maybe you're like many people watching this video and you just know that there are knives in existence that you don't own. Maybe your favorite company or favorite knife maker has recently put out a new model and you really want to get a hold of it. So any number of reasons that you want to buy a new knife, and some of those reasons, okay, are going to go into our next point, which is how do you figure out which knife to buy? Okay, if you're new to knives, or if you only have one knife and now it broke and you're looking for something else, this is a much more daunting question than if you're a knife collector or enthusiast. If you're a knife collector or enthusiast, you probably have like 100 knives on your to-buy list that are just waiting for, finances to be available. But maybe not. I've had times in my sort of collecting, in my enthusiasm, where there was nothing that was really exciting me and I didn't really have a strong sense of what I really wanted to buy next. All right. So think about, what do you want to do with this knife? Is it going to be, for slashing up pig carcasses? Then you definitely want, a cold steel katana machete, or, if it has to be a folding knife, then a Raja or an XL Espada. If your knife is for opening mail, well, then, you can go with something like a CRKT snap lock, or, a sharpened stone from, a sharpened piece of flint that you picked up on a hike. Most of us, though, are somewhere in between those extremes, right? We want a knife that's going to do the average kind of daily cutting tasks that we come across and do them reasonably well. So something like this is not going to be high on the list for most people. It's just too big, too bulky, and aimed directly at a particular kind of role, which is heavy duty, hard use type of stuff. So that's not going to be the knife for the average person. Something like this is probably going to be a little too light duty. I mean, it's not bad, but most of us are going to want something a little more robust that has a little more versatility to it than something like your Opinel. Not that the Opinel is a bad knife, but it's not as heavy duty as some others could be. Maybe, something that is non-locking, well, possibly, but for most people, I would recommend a knife that has a lock on it. So knives that are kind of, utility aimed, where they're designed to be useful cutting tools primarily. Maybe they have some other things going on. There's some extras that are helpful, like a really strong lock or a versatile design, or, extremely good tolerances, an interesting action. There are all kinds of, what would you say, supplemental things that you may be looking for. But if you just want a knife that's going to cut stuff and be reasonably handy for, day-to-day tasks, then all of these knives are going to work pretty well. And all of these knives have something that I think is worth considering, and that is versatility. Okay, and that's where I like to go, right? There are some knives that are sort of especially for tactical purposes, or especially for outdoor purposes, or specifically for, gentleman's carry. And those knives are fine. And I like a lot of knives that fit into those categories. And I have a lot of knives that fit into those categories because as a reviewer and as a collector, that diversity is appealing to me. But for the average person, you probably don't want to own 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 folding knives. You just want one that can do just about everything moderately well. Okay. And so for me, that means focusing on knives that are pretty well built, that have a pretty versatile blade shape, and that are going to be tough enough to do most tasks that I'm going to get into with a knife. All right, there is a bit of a spectrum here, but you can probably even see that most of these are going to be a little more robust, with maybe this one being, you know, a bit of an exception because it's got some other tools. And I would call this a sort of medium duty folder. I wouldn't want to go pounding on this too hard. Most of these would take a bit more of a beating than this guy would. And there's some diversity of opinion there as well. So what I like to focus on is versatility. All right, this has got a wide range of uses, and just about anything that I can encounter in a given day, you know, I like a knife that I can be fairly confident is going to handle it. Now, some other considerations that you may want to make is steel. Okay, so if you're new to knives, maybe you want to lean towards something like this or any of these top three where the steel is a little softer, it's a little easier to sharpen. All of these are moderately good, but they're not, I guess this one is maybe even a little better. So something in the, 8CR13 MOV, 14C28N is about my favorite budget steel. D2, 440C, all of these are budget steels that are going to work just fine. And, in fact, a number of people have brought this up, myself included, and no one ever agrees with me, but I'm going to say it anyway. The reality is, for about 99% of us, these budget steels are absolutely fine and we'll never need anything more. Buying the more expensive steels are only because we like to think that we need a better steel than we actually do. Okay, but those are some budget steels, some mid-range steels like CPM or some 154 CM, or, some of the tool steels or spring steels. If you're doing really heavy duty stuff, you're gonna be pounding on your blade, batoning, doing outdoor stuff. Those are all considerations. And then you've got the high-end steels like the XHP or the S35VN, or M390 or others that we could talk about. So steel is going to be a consideration as well when you think of how I'm going to be using my knife and what my skills are in terms of sharpening. All right, if you're a really good sharpener, then yeah, buy just about anything. You'll probably be able to get an edge on it. If you're new and you're afraid of that, then start out with some easier options like 440C or 8CR13 MOV or AUS8, and you can kind of work your way up from there. All right. Number two, are there legal restrictions where you are? Now, this is one of those things that's really weird. In Canada, we don't have the option to buy something and leave it at home. A lot of places, a lot of states, even a lot of countries in Europe that have more restrictive carry laws than Canada allow you to own stuff that you wouldn't be allowed to carry around in the streets. Where in Canada, we don't really do that. I guess they assume that anything you own, you're going to be carrying all the time. It's a little annoying, but like, for example, we can't own OTFs or gravity knives or balisongs or something like that. Even if we somehow said, hey, I will never let this leave my home, still can't have it. All right. Well, a lot of places, a lot of US states and a lot of European countries, you can own it and just not carry it. And so consider what's legal where you are. And then finally, you're going to have to consider your budget. Maybe your budget was considered first here, but that's definitely a consideration for what you are going to be looking at. All right, you can get, and here's the thing, you can get a functional, reasonably good knife in just about every budget, okay? We've got some cheaper stuff here and some mid-range stuff and then some really expensive stuff. I guess I left out most of the really, really expensive stuff. The other thing you may want to consider is that sometimes, you can get something that's a little nicer, but on sale. Okay, so there, Kaisers especially, you can often find, maybe you find a mass drop, or maybe you find, a model that's been out for a couple of years is on sale somewhere. So that's a consideration as well. Certain brands will go on sale and you can pick them up cheaper. And then of course you've got to consider what you want. Now, here's where I'm going to weigh in on this for a second. I would suggest that for most users, okay, for most knife users, saving up between $100 and $150 is going to serve you well, okay? Once you get up to that price point, you can get just about all of the performance you could ever want, okay? You're going to get a really, really good, high-functioning knife. Beyond that price point, okay, once you get beyond $150 to $200, you're really buying for other reasons other than you want a functional tool, okay? And so that's, you know, if you're looking for where you should set your budget, that's definitely something to consider. And again, consider, yes, there may be sales, or, you know, something may go out of production and you can pick it up really cheaply. Again, I think Knife Center has the Zero Tolerance 0909, which is a great knife. They're on sale for like $129. It's not as good as the Black Friday special where they were $100, which was awesome. But there are lots of options out there where, you know, you can get, maybe save a little bit of extra money. Now, that brings me to the next point, which is, okay, I've decided now that I want a paramilitary 2. You know, I watched Nut and Fancy's video, I watched Kevin Cleary's video, and Nick Shabaz's, and you know, Dr. Frunky's, and whoever else, and now I'm ready to buy the knife that I really, really want. Well, you know, I've decided it's just perfect for me. Well, where are you going to go to buy it? Okay, first off, some knives can be really hard to get. This is, you know, not as much of an issue as maybe it once was, but I can remember when I bought my first pair of 2. This was not the first one I bought, but when I bought my first one, they were really, really hard to get. And companies, you know, Blade HQ would get pair of 2s in stock, and within a day, they would all be sold out. And so, yeah, they were really, really difficult to get your hands on. So in that case, with certain knives where you just have to have a particular knife, you may not have as many options. But let's imagine you do. Let's say you want to buy, you know, a Rat Model 1. Well, where can you find a Rat Model 1? And the answer is everywhere. Okay, you can find one on all the major knife retailers. You can find one on eBay. You can find one on Amazon. You can find them at, you know, even retailer stores. Walmart probably has them. Okay, so where are you going to go to buy a knife like that, where there's tons and tons of options? And here's what I feel like you really ought to do with that, and that is shop around. I mean, check everywhere. Check everywhere you can think of. Check Knife Center and Knife Works and Blade HQ and DLT Trading and Warriors and Wonders. Just check all of the major knife retailers. Then check Amazon and check eBay. You know, finally, you know, check the secondary market. And that may be your first choice, okay? But even if that's your first choice, you should still get a really good handle on what these knives are selling for new. So if you're gonna buy on the secondary market, do your research. Make sure that you're getting a really good price. Now, and one of the things to keep in mind is I've often seen people, you know, they'll check one source. So they go click over to Knife Center and they say, yep, this knife sells for $150 on Knife Center, so I'm gonna sell it on the secondary market for $120, okay? Then what they don't realize, though, is that Blade HQ is running a promotion right now, and you can go buy a brand new one for $89.99, right? So you really have to shop around, and if you're going to buy on the secondary market, it's perhaps even more important to shop around and have a good sense for what this knife should cost. Now, part of that is, you know, if you find a great deal, then hey, go nuts. Then you can just go ahead and buy it. So shop around, do your due diligence, make sure that you've checked everywhere and every place that you can possibly think of to check. If you decide to buy from eBay or Amazon, okay, if you decide to buy there, then there are some special considerations you need to make, okay? And that is, you know, is this seller trustworthy? Is this knife cloned? Now, let me say this, okay? Sometimes I'll see people asking about a knife being cloned that nobody is making clones of, okay? So there are some knives out there that are popular to copy. The Para 2, the military, a number of customs, the Sabenza, well, this isn't in Nkosi, but knives from Chris Reeve are exceptionally popular. And so if you're buying any CRK, you know, you really want to be careful that you're getting the real thing. And the way to do that is make sure that you're dealing with a reputable seller. Either it's a retailer that you're familiar with and that has a great reputation, or if you're buying on the secondary market, you know, it's someone who, you know, you've been able to do some research on and get some background on. If it's eBay, then, you know, it's someone with perfect selling record. Same with Amazon. Of course, it's helpful to do knives that are sold by Amazon. That's a little bit safer, if you will. Now, even then, I remember a while back, there was a trend on one of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of where Amazon would get these zero tolerances, zero 350s. And they would be for like $45, $55, sometimes even cheaper than that. And they would go crazy buying these knives. Well, I can tell you right now that I would never, ever buy a 0350 from that Facebook group because they were clearly fakes and and a whole bunch of people were buying them. And it was really, really frustrating. Okay, they were even shipping from China. So if you see something like that, you know, if a deal is too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. Don't fall for it. All right. And so some of you watching may know exactly what group I'm talking about. And I'm just going to tell you, you know, you can talk till you're blue in the face. Those knives are fake. They're absolutely fakes. So moving on. Now you know where you're going to buy this from, whether you're going to buy it from Amazon or eBay or from the secondary market or wherever else. The next thing you're going to need to do is consider shipping. All right. Generally speaking, a lot of these guys are going to use U.S. Postal Service or Canada Post, depending on where you are. They may have an option to use like UPS or FedEx or something else. The one thing I would say here is be aware of that company's policies. I've gotten burned a number of times because, you know, the knife shows up. I've already paid for shipping and then the knife shows up and there's a surcharge for this and there's a handling fee for that and on it goes. One time I got a Benchmade, I can't remember what Benchmade it was. Anyway, the main point of the story is the knife was about $150 and the charges were like over $100 in a million different things that they decided that they should upcharge for, in addition to the shipping that I had already paid the seller. And so that was absolutely pathetic. I was so mad. But of course, at that point, they've got you over a barrel. They've got your item. And if you refuse to pay, guess what? That you're not going to get it. And so you need to be really careful about shipping policies. The other thing I will say is if you're going to buy on the secondary market, make sure, you know, and this is something I've seen growing, Facebook groups that are all about selling knives, Instagram, YouTube, forums. Now, forums tend to be a little safer because most forums have some kind of a feedback system where, you know, a seller is given a rating. And of course, you know, what you've got to do is only buy from sellers with good ratings. Now, a lot of you have asked me, how do I get a good rating? And you have to buy stuff. So, you know, if you've got this knife that you really want to sell, guess what? It ain't going to happen. You're going to have to go, you know, if you're going to go on Blade forums and you're going to post something even at a ridiculously low price, if you have a bad reputation or no reputation, it's going to be really, really tough. Facebook groups can be a little bit different because often you can develop relationships, and there are people in Facebook groups that I know and trust, and so I have no problem dealing with them. But I would say this, Facebook I think is also the most sketchy because anyone anywhere can just create an account, make up a whole backstory, and start scamming people, and they definitely do. Okay, so get references, check history, you know, Instagram accounts that have just popped up. I don't care how reputable the guy looks. I probably am not going to deal with them. You know, if an Instagram account has been around for 5 years or 10 years, they've sold tons of stuff. And, you know, especially I will also often message others that I know on Instagram and say, hey, who's dealt with this guy? Can you vouch for him or not? So make sure you do your research, make sure that wherever you're buying from, you're being safe. And then finally, you know, hopefully you can buy with a certain amount of confidence. By the way, while we're talking about this, I have sent a couple of emails to CBSA and I'm getting ready to make a video about how they respond to me. That's also going to include a giveaway for those who have donated to the GoFundMe for the legal fees associated with challenging the current state of imports. So finally, you've got your knife, you've ordered it. It came really fast and you're super stoked. It gets to you and you get it out of the box. What do you do now? Well, I would recommend you clean it up a little bit. I would recommend maybe, depending on the knife, okay, you may want to take it down and clean it up. A lot of times, stuff that's manufactured in China, and I mean stuff that's manufactured anywhere, will have dirt and grime and metal shavings and who knows what all else inside the mechanisms from the manufacturing process. Now, obviously, mid-tex, hand-assembled stuff aren't usually going to have those problems. But I've even had knives that were pretty high-end and presumably hand-assembled, come with a pretty rough action initially. And once I took it apart, and sometimes I've taken it apart, and yeah, there's a metal shaving, there's a whole bunch of dust from grinding right inside there, and so you clean that out and it works really well. You may want to oil it, especially if it's a non-stainless steel. Get some oil. Now consider what you're going to use the knife for. If it's food prep, then there are only certain oils that are going to be safe for that. And then, you know, go ahead and use your knife, get good at sharpening it and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. That's sort of the whole process from beginning to end. I've decided I want to buy a knife. What knife should I buy? Where should I buy it? What should I watch out for? To the point that you finally get your new knife and you take it apart, clean it up, make sure everything's running well, and you're good to go. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to, again, hear your stories down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.